Most people start building a food supply in completely the wrong place. They grab whatever looks useful, fill a shelf, and feel better for about a week. Then half of it expires. The other half never gets used, and they quietly give up. The people who actually get this right start with just a handful of plain cheap foods already sitting in your grocery store. That ordinariness is exactly why most people walk right past them. Today, we are covering the three foods experienced preppers reach for first, because when you understand why these three matter, everything else starts to make sense. The grocery store has always felt permanent, but the system behind it is delicate. Food travels enormous distances and depends on fuel, weather, harvests, trucks, workers, and 100 small things going right. When even one link wobbles, it happens slowly, then suddenly. A product gets harder to find, prices creep up, and one day it simply is not there. The three foods we are covering store for a very long time, are inexpensive, form the foundation of human nutrition, and are boring enough that nobody panic buys them, meaning they are usually still available when flashier items are already gone. Let us begin with the third food on our list and work our way up to the one that matters most. Number three is white rice. I know it is not exciting. There's nothing dramatic about a bag of rice, but that plain bag is one of the most efficient survival foods ever discovered. And the people who understand food storage almost always build their entire pantry around it. Here's why it matters so much. Rice gives you something most other foods cannot give you at the same price, and that is reliable calories. When people think about food, they think about taste and variety. When you are thinking about preparedness, you think about energy. The answer's in where rice comes from. A very large share of the world's rice is grown and exported by a small number of countries, and those countries protect their own populations first when things get tight. We have already seen this happen in recent years. When harvest came in weak because of drought, some major rice exporting nations simply restricted how much they would sell to the rest of the world. They were not being cruel. They were feeding their own people, but the effect rippled outward fast. Prices jumped in places far away, and importing countries scrambled to find supply. That is the part worth sitting with for a moment. The rice on your shelf may have traveled across an ocean. The decision about whether it keeps arriving is being made by people in another part of the world who are watching their own weather and their own warehouses, not yours. Before we move to the second food, I want to pause on something because this next thought explains why so many smart, capable people end up unprepared. It is not laziness, it is familiarity. When you see something every single day, your brain stops really seeing it. The full grocery store is the perfect example. Number two is dried beans, and more broadly, the whole family of dried legumes. Black beans, pinto beans, lentils, split peas, chickpeas, any of them, all of them. If rice solves the problem of calories, beans solve the problem of protein, and that is a far harder problem than most people realize. In a long disruption, fresh meat is one of the first things to become unreliable because meat depends on refrigeration, on processing plants, on cold transport, on a chain that breaks easily and breaks early. Dried beans need none of that. They sit on a shelf completely stable, holding a dense supply of protein and fiber, waiting patiently until you need them. Most people, when you lay it out plainly, nod along. They agree the supply chain is fragile. They agree that early is better than late, and then they wait anyway. Why? Because nothing has happened yet. The human mind is built to respond to what is in front of it, not to what is probable. A clear and present problem grabs us. A quiet, slow-moving risk does not, even when the slow risk is far more likely to actually reach us. We are wonderful at reacting and surprisingly poor at anticipating. So, we tell ourselves, we will get to it next month, after the next paycheck, when life calms down. And life never quite calms down. And months go by, and the preparation that would have taken a few easy shopping trips never happens, until the day it can no longer be done calmly at all. The way out of this trap is not more fear. Fear actually makes the waiting worse because it makes the whole subject unpleasant, and we avoid unpleasant things. The way out is to make preparation small, normal, and boring. A little extra rice this week, A few bags of beans next week, no drama, no big event. Just a quiet habit that, over a couple of months, leaves you in a completely different position than the people around you, without you ever once feeling panicked. Calm preparation beats frightened scrambling every single time, and it costs less too. Which brings us to the number one food, the one that almost everyone forgets, the one that, in a strange way, makes all the others work. Number one is salt. I can almost hear the reaction. Salt? That is the big one? That is the food the experienced preppers reach for first? Yes, and once you understand why, you will never look at that cheap container of salt the same way again. Start with the simplest fact. Your body cannot live without salt. It is not a seasoning. It is a requirement. So, why does almost no one stockpile it? Because it is the ultimate familiar object. We have already talked about how familiarity blinds us, and salt is the purest example. It is so cheap, so common, so utterly taken for granted that it never enters anyone's mind as something worth securing. People will spend money on elaborate gear and fancy freeze-dried kits, while completely overlooking the one item that is cheap, eternal, biologically essential, and historically proven. The very ordinariness that should make it obvious is exactly what makes it invisible. And notice the pattern. Because nobody thinks to stockpile salt, it is rarely the thing that vanishes first in a rush. The crowds clear out the dramatic items, while everyone fights over things that matter less. That is the recurring lesson of this entire list. The foods that protect you best are usually the ones too plain to panic over. The practical advice here is almost laughably simple, which is part of the beauty of it. Buy plain salt. It costs very little. Buy a reasonable amount, more than the single container most homes keep, and store it somewhere dry. Salt brings up a larger idea that is worth a moment, because it explains why experienced people care about things that seem trivial. During any real disruption, it is rarely the dramatic shortage that wears people down. It is the small conveniences quietly going missing. The seasoning that made dinner enjoyable, the coffee in the morning, the little comforts that in normal life you never even register as comforts because they are simply always there. When those vanish, the day starts to feel heavier in a way that is hard to name. People expect a crisis to feel like a movie. In reality, it usually feels like a long string of small frustrations, each one minor on its own, all of them adding up. This is why. Thoughtful preparation includes a few of those small comforts on purpose. A little extra salt, the coffee or tea you actually like, a few familiar treats that keep morale steady. They take up almost no space and cost almost nothing. Yet, they do something the calories alone cannot. Now, step back and look at what we have actually built here, because the three foods were never really separate. Rice gives you energy, the daily fuel that keeps the body going. Beans give you protein, the building material that keeps the body strong. And salt keeps that body chemically balanced, lets you preserve other food, and makes the whole thing bearable to eat day after day. Energy, structure, and the element that ties them together and keeps them functioning. Three plain foods, none of them dramatic, none of them expensive, that together form a genuine foundation a person can stand on. So, let me leave you with the mindset that matters most, because the foods are only half of it. Preparedness is not about expecting the worst. It is about removing a particular kind of stress from your life before it ever has a chance to arrive. The person with a quiet supply of rice, beans, and salt in the closet is not living in fear. Quite the opposite. They are living with a little more peace, because one of the oldest human worries, the worry about food, has been gently set aside. They walk through a tense news cycle differently than everyone else, not because they know something others do not, but because they acted while it was still calm and easy to act. Really do not. You just have to begin with one of these three on your very next normal trip to the store. No clearing of shelves, no drama, just a quiet habit that puts you a few steps ahead of where you were. So, I will ask you this, and I would genuinely like to know in the comments. Of these three foods, the rice, the beans, or the salt, Which one are you going to start with first? And is there a fourth staple you have already been quietly building up that you think belongs on this list? If this way of thinking makes sense to you, the calm and practical kind without the fear and the noise, consider subscribing so you can think a few steps ahead with us each week. It is about giving yourself a little less to worry about on all the ordinary ones.